Before the start of this video, I want to put up some brief trigger warnings related to what we will be discussing today. If these topics seem like something that could potentially ruin your day or bring back memories you'd rather not deal with, I totally understand if you need to click off. Highly recommend checking out a video that's going to either make you laugh or brighten your day. Please don't watch this video if you think it's going to have an adverse effect on your mental well-being. Lots of love. Let's get into the video. Hello, everybody. My name is Kit the Sune, and today we're going to be talking about Consensual Hex, a book by Amanda Harlowe. This is relatively old information. The book was published a little under a year ago, and the controversy around this book started last July, so it's been about a year. I'm making this video because I've only ever seen one person talk about it on YouTube, that being Jess Owens, on the BookTube side of things. She has a series called Book Community Tuesdays, where she talks about the weekly information surrounding BookTube, authors, books being released, the Twitterscape of author Twitter or whatever. She has a very good personality, she just has a very nice personality that comes through in her videos. Very well researched videos, honestly. I can't keep up with everything that happens in a community, any community, much less the writing community, where there's so many different facets and genres and people. So highly recommend checking her out. I will be linking her video down below. She covers two other topics in the video, but her coverage of the consensual hex stuff that was pretty early on during the controversy was that section's very well done. Highly recommend it. Link it below. So Consensual Hex is a urban fantasy novel written by Amanda Harlowe, as I said, and it was published on October 6th, 2020. It was published by Grand Central Publishing, which are the publishers of Parable of the Sour and Dawn, both by Octavia E. Butler. Very talented writer, one that you will probably see in a lot of literature classes at university. Parable of the Sour was something I was assigned to read in my modern American lit classes. Bless Me Ultima by Rodolfo Anaya. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I did not get that correct. Which is a classic, revolves around Middle America literature. Well, it is Middle America literature. Classic. I don't know what else I could say about it. Either you know it or you don't. Carry On, Reflections for a New Generation by the late Reverend John Lewis. If that name doesn't immediately ring a bell, he is a former U.S. congressman. He worked very closely with the late Martin Luther King Jr., very big civil rights activist, unfortunately passed away within the past few years. Did a lot of good for this country, and is a very intelligent, very caring man, and his books show that. Grand Central Publishing is also doing the Billie Eilish book, which is more of one of those coffee table $40 books. That's coming out later this year. Just so you get an idea of what kind of books they publish. They were also behind this book, which is insane because we'll get into it. Amanda Harlowe is seemingly non-existent online, which is very odd for a new publisher. This is very odd for a new author. This is generally because most authors, especially new authors, you need to build your own marketing for your books. That's not really something a publisher will give you. They won't give you marketing. So it's generally recommended that if you're an author, you have a Twitter or an Instagram or a YouTube that's pretty well established and you already have a base. So you're able to market to them and then continue to build that and build your author platform. So it's very odd that she doesn't really have any of these things. She doesn't even have a blog. She does have a website, which I will link down below. It's very odd because there are no tabs, there's no about me, there's no about upcoming releases or anything like that. It is just her name, two pictures of herself looking like Rose Armitage in Get Out post reveal that she's a serial kidnapper and trafficker. I'm sorry, I can't get it out of my head. I'll put two pictures up so you can understand where I'm coming from. But just very intense, intimidating look in her eyes. She honestly just kind of scares me. But it's just two pictures of herself, the cover of Consensual Hex, and then like 6 reviews from other authors and newspapers. So not the traditional author website that you would find. Nowadays, there's no blog or anything. Like, it's very empty, and it's very strange because this is not what you normally find for new authors or debut authors. Like, there's literally nothing about her. I tried to find her social media. I tried to find if she had any responses to these allegations or actions. And there is nothing. There's just her website that has nothing on it, and that's it. And then her book on Grand Central Publishing, you have to like search for it in order to find it. And of course, this has been like a year after all of this has happened, but it's just, you would think there would be more from a debut author, and there is very little if you look her up other than articles written by other publications or news sites about this story. There's nothing really from her. So that is just something I found very odd. So getting into Consensual Hex, I'll put up the synopsis right here. I don't really want to read it out loud because of YouTube suppression things, but basically this book revolves around S.A., the women it happens to, in a private women's college in Massachusetts called Smith, which is a real place. It's part of the 5 college... it's 5 college something involving a few other colleges, notably Smith and Amherst and the University of Michigan Amherst. Not Michigan, the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Sorry, I have a lisp. And that is really hard to say. Sorry. But the 2 most notable ones in this book are Amherst and Smith. And Amanda Harlowe is a former student from Smith. I'm not quite sure if she graduated from Smith. The recounts and testimonials on Goodreads suggest she left or dropped out or transferred out. But she is a former student at Smith, and so are the other women that have been affected by this story. So here's the thing. If there weren't any controversy, this book would show a decent amount of promise. Like, the premise is very engaging and very relevant because this came out a little bit after the Me Too era started. Very important, very relevant essay on college campuses is unfortunately a very big problem, and getting justice for those things is very difficult because of college policies and college police and things like that. It is very difficult to get justice, and this book seems to be addressing that, which is good. Books addressing modern issues in the modern era is very good. However, during the ARC or Advanced Reader Copy process for this book, 3 women came forward on Goodreads. And if you don't know what the ARC process is, that is generally when publishers or independent authors send out copies of their books in order for people to review them early. This helps build up hype for the books, helps get attention on them, and helps you have a more successful release. So during the ARC process, a few students or a few former students and former classmates of Harlowe got copies of these books and noticed some similarities to some of their friends and reached out to those friends, letting them know, letting them read what was contained within Consensual Hex, and these 3 women came forward on Goodreads. Now, I'm going to be addressing them by the screen names that they use on Goodreads. I do not know if these are related to actual first names or not. But I do not want to dox these women because they're trying to prevent essentially doxing, which I will get into. However, their screen names are Sunny, Ashblight, and Izzy Levy. they were former classmates of Harlowe while they were at Smith, and they, in their testimonials on Goodreads, allude to developing a several-month-long friendship between the four of them, and that kind of dissipating and overall ending when Harlowe left Smith. Now, so the thing that Sunny, Ash, and Izzy have alleged is that Harlowe turned them into caricatures that she then put into Consensual Hex, and if I'm being entirely honest, the things that happen to these characters are very disgusting, and the fact that they are based off of real women is even more disgusting, and also leads into potential legal troubles, which I will get into later and explain, obviously, but I just want to start with the allegations. So the other thing is there are testimonials from other acquaintances of Harlowe and also acquaintances of Sunny, Ash, and Izzy on Goodreads, attesting to Harlowe's character, attesting to the validity of the claims made by these three women, and all sorts of other things. I will touch base, or I will touch on all of them here. I'll put some of them up on the screen, things like that. So just a little pre-warning before I get directly into the allegations. Sunny and Ash in particular have since abridged their comments on the Goodreads page for this book. And this is because of their need for privacy concern. They had some privacy concerns as this story was starting to blow up a little bit more than I guess they anticipated. So they didn't want certain details about themselves out and about. And so I want to respect that by not putting the screenshots of the original comments left on the Goodreads page up. Instead, I will be citing the quotes from a blog called Truly Booked, which was written by a woman named Lindsay. I will be leaving the link to that article down below. It's very well written, and the quotes that she uses do not have any super identifiable details or anything like that. So I feel comfortable using those just to make sure these women's privacy is respected, because I have a little bit more concern for that than Amanda Harlowe, apparently. So let's get into who each of the main characters of this book are in correlation to these four real women. Lee is our main character. I believe her full name is Lucille, but she goes by Lee throughout the book. And she's our main character. It's clearly Amanda Harlowe. This is clearly a self-insert character, and there's nothing criminal about having a self-insert character. It's a little bit amateur to have a self-insert character in a published work. I say this as someone who is studying fiction writing in university and fully intends to be a published creator. And this is something a lot of my professors have said. And it honestly, it really is amateur to have a self-insert character, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's not, you're not going to get in trouble. You might get laughed at on the internet, but there's nothing wrong with that. However, the fact that this character is a self-insert makes the actions that Lee commits against other characters a lot more troubling. And we know she's a self-insert because the plot revolves around her. All of the characters revolve around her and put so much interest on her. The way she's written is in the typical style of a self-insert character, and I will get into the writing of this book a little bit later on. So yeah, it just makes the actions Lee commits against other characters a lot more troubling, knowing that this is a self-insert for the author. Luna is a romantic interest of Lee, and she's overtly sexualized throughout the book. This character is based off of Sunny, the first woman that came forward. Among the things Sunny recognized were details about her family, her appearance, her more intimate details about her romantic life, her academics, and the full real name of her former high school, which is not good. You should not put other people's information like that out there. That can be very identifiable and can lead to harassment and other issues. So the third character I want to talk about is Charlotte. Charlotte is the diversity token of this book. She is an international exchange student from Korea, I believe, is where she is set, where her background is set. She's based off of Ashblight, who is a white woman, which is very, very strange. Notable information Harlowe thought was appropriate to include were specific medical details, which is definitely not true, descriptions of Ash's previous place of residence while attending Smith College, and the name of her hometown. A lot of identifiable information. Like, Lindsay says this in her article on Totally Booked. She's one phone number away from just doxing these people. And I totally agree. Like, all this information is very concerning to include about someone you're not getting permission to include these details for. Like, if she wanted to include details that were relevant to only her, like her own high school's name, or her own medical background, or her own details about whatever, that would be fine, because that she has her own consent to do that. And doing this to people who you have not spoken to in over 7 years is very concerning. You're not writing a biography. You're doing these things in order to belittle and humiliate them, which is not cool. And we're not even done. We're not even really at the worst of it, in my opinion. The worst treatment is the villain character, whose name is Gabby. Gabby is also an offensive anti-Semitic caricature, and is a direct portrayal of Izzy. Izzy made the decision not to share any specific things that Harlowe included, but does say that details about what Gabby has endured in terms of trauma is very similar to what Izzy has endured and what Harlowe knew Izzy had endured, because as friends you share those things. And Harlowe also portrayed her struggles with mental illness and trauma incredibly hurtfully, and it's very disgusting. She basically uses the way Gabby is processing trauma and mental health issues as a way to villainize her. Harlowe also decides to comment on the size of Gabby's nose within the text, which has a similar appearance to Izzy's, who is a Jewish woman, and this is a parallel to the anti-Semitism that a lot of people face. A lot of Jewish people and a lot of Jewish characters have exaggerated features, such as having large or hooked noses. So this being here is an indication towards anti-Semitism. Again, super not cool. The climax involves massive trigger warning for this. Here's the timestamp if you want to skip, or just skip ahead like 10, 20 seconds. The climax of the novel involves Lee, the main character, assaulting Izzy with a woman's pleasure toy, not in the form of SA, but actually hitting her repeatedly over the head with it, which is really messed up, and then blackmailing her to not call the cops. Okay, trigger warning over. We've covered the really messed up thing that I wanted to address really quickly. There is a fifth person there's a fourth person who has since come forward and said that they used to be friends with Harlowe and that they are portrayed negatively in this book. That is the author Emmett Nahil. I hope I am pronouncing that last name correctly. Complete apologies if I did not get that correct. That is, Emmett Nahil is apparently the inspiration for a minor character named Zara. Emmett was friends with Harlowe during their high school years. He detailed on Twitter, I'll put some screenshots up, what Harlowe ripped from his life, including previous jobs, hobbies, and numerous insults towards his parents, who are Middle Eastern. Not cool. I really don't get what's going on with this. Like, this is very concerning behavior. I don't understand, A, how this was published, B, how Harlowe decided to write this and then decide to pursue publication. Harlowe also tries to portray Emmett's character Zara as a TERF. If you don't know what a TERF is a trans-exclusive, exclusionary, radical feminist, basically transphobic feminist, quote-unquote, which is really weird because her previous writings have very transphobic and homophobic over and undertones, and Emmett is a trans man. Not saying trans men can't be TERFs, but I've looked at Emmett's Twitter. He's an author. Highly recommend checking out his work. He's not a TERF. Like, he's just not. There's also a testimonial from a woman named Jennifer on Goodreads that point prospective readers to a piece Harlowe wrote called Conversion Camp under the pen name A.E. Hopkins, which is also based off the aforementioned women and includes a more accurate depiction of Harlowe's feelings towards the LGBTQ communities and social justice issues. Read more bigoted than you could gather from all of this. Just great. Okay, I really don't... I mentioned this in the Creepshow art video. If you haven't seen that, link below. Stealing the stories of other people, claiming their trauma as your own to tell is very disgusting. I cannot stand for that. So all of this so far is just bad. And that's like ignoring the craft, which I'll get into in a minute. Just all of this is very disgusting and very disturbing. Taking other people's... This is a story that revolves around consent and the lack of consent. Stories about SA are intrinsically tied with the topic of consent. And because you are writing about consent, it is very weird and very offensive that you would take the stories of other women that have endured painful things and have endured assault, and you would take the consent away from them to tell their own stories and simply throw it into your book and release it out into the world. That's not okay, and I'm amazed this didn't get more coverage because this is appalling. This is truly disgusting. I have no respect for anyone who does anything like this, and that's why I'm making this video. As for the actual craft of the work, which is so not important after everything we've covered, but, you know, might as well cover all my bases. I took the time to read the first 20-ish pages in a sample accessible on Google. It's not pirated. It's like if you Google any book, it'll show you like the, I think it's like the first maybe like 15th of a book. If you ever look up a book, it'll have like a little sample for you to read, and then you can buy the rest of it. So not pirated. I don't support piracy of novels or anything like that, so I did not read this pirated. But I read the first 20-ish pages in a sample, and this is coming from someone who is being educated in the fiction writing field. I'm not an editor. I'm not anything like that. I'm just going at this from the perspective of a fellow writer. The prose is very lackluster. I've honestly had better experience in my peer review classes critiquing someone's Warhammer 40k fan fiction. That's not a joke. I actually did have to do that, and I had a better experience. There is the presence of some higher thought that maybe in a better story that was not shrouded in controversy and was actually written by someone who kind of knew what they were doing, could be or could go somewhere pretty interesting. There's this idea of predators being like, there are two different types of predators. One is an idiot and the other is a snake. And that entire section was actually pretty interesting, but everything else is just poorly written. There's not a lot of good characterization. The first 20 pages, you're supposed to like be introduced and start rooting for the main character, and I didn't really get that when reading about Lee. You're introduced to the predator in the first 20 pages, and it's not good. You're not really, there's not a lot of there's nothing really worth praising in this book. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's like within the first 20 pages, there's a lot of concerning stuff. The characterization we get isn't that great, and not intriguing enough to continue reading the horrors within, you know? So now that I've touched on that and explained why this is not a good book and not something anyone should bother reading, there are a few good, positive reviews about this book that I did want to touch on. And of course, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I just want to explain why I think some of these reviews exist, because some of these reviews are coming from concerning places, and some of them, I think, one of them in particular, I think is just coming from a place of misinformation, or just someone who is not completely aware of how things work in the US where this book was published, which I'll get into in a minute. So the first review I want to talk about is the review from Kirkus. If you're unaware, Kirkus is one of those really big time companies that having a positive review from is pretty important in the process of getting your book out into the world. So the fact that this book has a positive review is concerning, obviously, because Kirkus, people value the opinion of Kirkus. However, the thing about Kirkus is most of the time reviews are paid for. They do distinguish between their paid and unpaid reviews because their unpaid reviews have a star system. That's just to keep it fully transparent. However, the unstarred reviews are generally paid for, and because they are paid for, they're not just going to completely trash talk a book that they were paid to review. However, the fact that Kirkus accepted money for this is very disgusting. I'm not entirely sure anyone realized what was in this or if the book was even fully read. But yeah, it's still concerning. However, I understand its existence. It's just concerning, and you shouldn't accept money for something like this. And I will get into later, there are legal issues with this book existing. The second review I really want to talk about is not really one review, it's a collection of reviews. Both Amazon and Goodreads have several reviews, with Goodreads hosting 161 at the time of recording and Amazon hosting only 31 reviews. The big discrepancy, I believe, is because on Amazon you can only really post a review that is visible to people after you have purchased the book. However, anyone can post a review on Goodreads whether you've read the book or not. And a lot of people have not been reading the book on Goodreads. They are people providing testimonials, which I think explains the wide gap in amount of reviews. However, on Goodreads, there are 40 5-star reviews, which is interesting because that's a lot for a book that seems to be so problematic. However, I went into the filters to try to look at these reviews and try to see what they were saying. However, whenever I put in the filter to just look at the 5-star ratings, they would not show up. They would just stay with the most popular reviews, basically. And I did try this with like the 2-star review, and that did work. So I'm not quite sure if something's just wrong with my browser. However, what I do think is happening is a user noticed that the 5-star reviews appeared to be left by fake accounts. I'll put the post that indicates that up here. This details why they think it's fake, and someone responded to it. I think Goodreads is aware that these posts or these positive reviews might be fake, so they're just suppressing them or making it so they can't be viewed. However, on Amazon, there is no suppression of the reviews, and there are 7 5-star reviews. I'll put them up here, and I'm not saying these are all fake. What I am saying is there's some commonalities between the names left, which seems pretty odd to me, given that there's the accusation that the author may be faking reviews on Goodreads, so similar naming conventions are a little bit odd on Amazon. So I'll put them up here, and I'll put the names that I think are interestingly similar together. Again, not saying any of these are fake. All of these could be genuine. I'm just saying it's a little bit odd, and given that there is that accusation on other reviewing platforms, I just wanted to address that here. The last review I noticed is one that made me want to go more in depth on the legal ramifications of a book like this. There's nothing really wrong with this review. I disagree with it. However, that is not a problem. Cravenwild is a blog run by the writer and reviewer Hermione Flavia. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Her review of the novel is well articulated and relatively positive. I really don't have a problem with that. It's based entirely off of the content, so, if you enjoy the content, whatever, you do you. However, Flavia does write about how the controversy surrounding this book must be related to cancel culture, and how attacking authors for writing about other people is wrong and damaging the publishing industry. She makes a point that Sunny, Ash, and Izzy should have gone through a legal route rather than coming to the internet, and honestly, this just reads as someone who is completely unfamiliar with legal processes in the US. I say that because Flavia has on her About page, it talks about how she grew up in Australia, spent some time in England, and then has residence in Canada, and doesn't really mention living in the US or spending time in the US. So given that you've never been to or spent a long time in a specific country, you probably don't know the legal workings of that place. I'm not saying she's ignorant. I'm just saying if you don't live somewhere, you're probably not going to know about certain things. And so I want to take this time to explain why going through the legal route is probably not the best idea. I also want to say she makes a point of being worried that people will needlessly attack her. I'm not attacking her, and I hope if you watch this, you don't go and attack her, because she can like whatever book she likes, and I'm not attacking her. I literally have no ill will towards her. I just saw this review, and it made me realize if you're not familiar with the way things like this work, you might have a similar opinion to her and think, why didn't these three women just go through a legal route? Why'd they have to go with the internet? So I want to talk about that now. What are the potential consequences that Sunny, Ash, and Izzy could pursue against Harlowe and Grand Central Publishing? Keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer. These are just potential things that could be pursued, not necessarily guaranteeing a conviction or a settlement would be guaranteed if these legal charges were pursued. Also, some of these are criminal offenses and some of them are civil, so they have slightly different punishments. I had to ask a friend of mine who is studying law about these because I just didn't know what all of these terms were. So I'm going to list out these terms, define them, and then explain what the potential punishment could be for each of them. So the first thing is defamation. This is the publication of false statements of fact that damages someone's reputation. This is a criminal offense that is potentially punishable by up to 1 year in jail or fines of $1,000. Another thing they could pursue is false light. False light is the untrue or misleading portrayal and also an invasion of privacy based on injuring the victim's reputation. This is a civil charge. Most punishments would include fines instead of jail time. The third thing they could pursue is libel. Libel is the publishing of false statements that harm someone's reputation. The written form of defamation, punishable by up to 1 year in jail or fines of $1,000. The fourth thing they could pursue is violation of someone's right to publicity. This is the right to prevent unauthorized use of someone's name or likeness by a third person for profit, which is considered a misdemeanor and punishable by fines in most states. This is very important because Harlowe is using their likeness within this book and not using their names, using very identifiable information about themselves and painting them in a poor light. The final thing that could potentially be pursued is doxing. Doxing is the publishing of private or identifying information with malicious intent, punishable by up to 1 year in jail and a $1,000 fine. So those all sound like good options. They theoretically could have pursued them. So why didn't they? Why didn't Sunny, Ash, and Izzy get lawyers and press charges? Here's the thing. In the US, lawsuits take time and they also take a ton of money. Money that these women might not have and money Harlowe probably has access to. This is due to a thing that is present in a lot of traditionally published authors' contracts called author indemnities. It's a legal stipulation in a lot of contracts stating the publisher can help pay for legal counsel related to one's work. So they'd have to put out money that they might not even have, go up against a company, which is so much bigger than them, in a legal system that takes months or even years to make a decision on significantly more severe charges. And they could potentially lose for the book containing all of this information to be published, potentially grow in popularity to their detriment. Or they could do what they did. They can go online, they can share their stories and let other people know what's going on directly. They did try to get a hold of Grand Central Publishing, according to both Ash and Sunny's testimony on Goodreads. They did try to get a hold of them. The legal representative that they got in contact with promised changes to the details. However, after publication, Sunny read through a copy at Barnes & Noble without purchasing it and discovered only minimal changes were made to names of locations such as high schools and hometowns, but most remained, including a significant amount of medical details. So I totally understand why these women turned to the internet. The internet doesn't have any legal jurisdiction, but it is spectacularly amazing at getting things done. Before they published their reviews on Goodreads, no one would get back to them at Grand Central Publishing. And even afterwards, not much in the novel was changed. However, them being open about the abuse contained in the story prevented it from achieving any notable praise or popularity, which would have saved them embarrassment and widespread defamation or defamation to their reputation. I wanted to make this video because I did see some critiques towards these women, and I think this book is an allegory for the real world and the problems that victims still face in this country and in other countries when they are victims of such violating actions, even ones that are much more severe. The court system and the legal system won't do anything for you unless you have the money to back it up. However, on the internet, if you come on the internet and you share the truth, the internet is a very understanding place. However cruel it can be sometimes, however stupid a lot of people can be, the internet is very understanding, and the internet is very helpful when you really need it. Sites like GoFundMe and Kickstarter are evidence of people's generosity and how people want to help. The response to these testimonials on the Consensual Hex Goodreads page is indication that people are understanding and people want to help victims and do anything they can to help make sure victims are heard. And part of the reason I wanted to make this video is so that I, as insignificant as this channel may be, I am saying that I heard the three of these women and I don't support this book, and I feel like more people need to be outspoken about things like this. Taking inspiration from people that are in your life and taking that inspiration and putting it into a character, there's nothing wrong with that. However, intentionally going through and systematically outing details about former friends, personal lives, history, medical information, doing terrible things to their stand-in character, with a character that is meant to be an insert of yourself, that's not okay. This book is not anything like taking inspiration from a friend or an important mentor and putting that inspiration into a character that means something to you within your work. This is the term revenge came up a lot in a lot of articles written about this, which I will link below. And that's what this is. This is revenge. This is the author trying to take out some vendetta on these women, and I don't know what their past is. I don't know what their conflicts were. I don't care. This is not okay. You cannot use the art of storytelling to follow through on some petty, disgusting revenge, and you shouldn't do it with a publisher's name behind you, especially a publisher that has published such significant works. And I know they took this book on, and I know they knew, looking at the text, that this was wrong. The publisher is just as at fault here for giving this book an audience, giving this book a platform to stand on. And this is disgusting, and I needed to make this video because knowing and not talking about it felt wrong. I really appreciate your time if you decided to make it all the way through this video. This is a subject that's very important to me, if you may be able to tell if you've watched a few of my videos. Writing is very important to me. The ability to share one's own story is very important to me. And that is why I wanted to talk about this today. I hope that you are having a fantastic day. I hope this didn't put a shadow over any positive emotions you're having today. I hope that wherever Sunny, Ash, and Izzy are, and Emmett, wherever they are having a good day. And I hope Harlowe never publishes anything again or tries anything like this again, because this is just sad and pathetic. Until next time, see you later.